crack, guys? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in May, and I read 12. What? Yes, I read 12 books in May. That is unheard of for me. The most I've ever read in a month was 11, and that was in 2017. It is blowing my mind that I read that many books, and so since I have read that many books, this video is probably going to be quite long. I'm going to cut this intro really short and just dive on into the books. A lot of these books that I read in May were all fangirl related in one way or another. I will have my fangirl TBR linked down below. I didn't read all of those books in that TBR, but I got to a vast majority of them. Let's just dive on into all of those books that I read in May. And to start that off, I read Star Trek Voyager Mosaic by Jerry Taylor. This is the story of Captain Catherine Janeway. Jerry Taylor takes us through pivotal moments in Catherine Janeway's life, from when she's a child to when she's like a youngster to a teenager to a cadet to a captain, and these are all moments that forged the woman that we know and love in Star Trek Voyager. Well, I love her. I give this 4 stars, and I'll tell you why it's 4 stars, because I didn't really like the kind of C storyline. I like the A and the B storyline. The C one was a little bit weird, and I kind of just found myself like skipping over that. But nevertheless, I loved all of the information about Catherine Janeway. This is actually a reread for me. I read this years ago when I was like 14, maybe 15, maybe even younger. I have no idea where my copy went. So when I was deciding that, you know, May, it is Katharine Hepburn's birth month, it is Catherine Janeway's birth month, I was like, you know what, I'm going to read all of the fangirl books. This did not disappoint in terms of fangirliness, because, you know, it's all about Catherine Janeway. The thing that made this even more special is that Jerry Taylor, it was one of the writers for the show. She was one of the executive producers for the show. So she knew Catherine Janeway inside and out. So this is technically gospel. It is not written in stone that this is everything about Catherine Janeway, because there are moments throughout the series where they kind of diverged from it a little bit. Like when Janeway talks about how her father died, it doesn't mention that her fiance died in the same shuttle crash, or that she was actually present. But nevertheless, it is a very good read. I recommend it for any fan of Catherine Janeway. It's very fun, and yeah, it was like a great way to kick off the fangirly reading month. After that, I read the Star Trek Gateways books. I read the Next Generation one, which was called Doors into Chaos, written by Robert Greenberger. I have the Deep Space Nine Gateway book, which was Demons of Air and Darkness by Keith R.A. de Candida, and the Star Trek Voyager Gateways book, which was No Man's Land, written by Christy Golding. I give all of them 3 stars. They weren't anything particularly engaging. The Next Generation one was engaging in that it gave Deanna a lot more to do, and it allowed her to spread her wings a little bit into more of the command route. She did an amazing job with it, but each of the stories didn't really grab me anyway. These were all pretty much rereads for me again, because I read them when I was younger. I forgot half of the stuff that went down in them. All I remembered that at the end of them they went through gateways, and so I wanted to finally get to the climax of this series and get to what lay beyond. As I said, each of them was fine. They were enjoyable to an extent. They didn't really blow my mind. They were, you know, middle of the road, you know, just decent things that could have made like a decent episode in each series. And that's why I gave them 3 stars. After that, I finished listening to the audiobook for Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind. This is the first book in the Sword of Truth series, which is what The Legend of the Seeker was based off of, which was a Netflix series back in the day when Netflix was in its infancy. This book is intimidating. Just look at it. It is intimidating. That's why I went down the audiobook route. I love this book. I give it like 4.75. The romance between Kaylin and Richard I did not like, especially for a first book and for people that just kind of fell into knowing each other by accident. And like, Kaylin's supposed to be this mother confessor who's this head bitch in charge. Like, when she goes like all HBIC on people, I am like, yes, Kaylin, yes, that is what I want from you. And then next thing you know, she's like crying over Richard, or like needing Richard to hold her, and I'm like, seriously? Like, I know that's probably what people like call like, you know, dimension and shit, but not when you're the mother confessor and you're like the most powerful confessor in the land. You don't do that. So that's why I knocked it down to 0.25, but nevertheless, I loved it. I love the characters. Zed, oh my goodness, loved him. Loved the voice that the narrator did for him. Kaylin, my favorite. Oh my goodness, and I cannot wait to get on to the next book in the series. If you don't know what the Sword of Truth series is about, it follows Richard, who is the Seeker, and he is the Seeker of Truth, and he has this sword that he can use. And he gets introduced to Kaylin, who tries to rescue her from these people that he thinks are going to harm her, but he doesn't know that she is, a bit of a badass. They're looking for this book that leads to this box that can overpower this world. And Darkenrahl is looking for all of these boxes that will determine his fate, or like determine his abilities or his powers or something like that. It is set in this magical world where like there's 3 different realms and it kind of all separated. There's Westland, Midland, and Dahara. And it is incredible. I got so lost in it. So yes, 4.75, very enjoyable, loved it. Kaylin is everything, and I'm looking forward to continue on with the rest of the series. I actually DNF'd a book in May, and that was a Star Trek book. It was the Gateways What Lay Beyond book, which is the culmination of the Gateways series. I hated it. It is a collection of short stories which has each character that went through the gates at the end of each book, and it's a story that revolves around them. I read the Deep Space Nine one revolving around Kira, and I read the Voyager one revolving around Captain Janeway. Hated them. I thought that Gateways was going to be something completely different, and I felt like this book, these short stories, were such cop-outs. I thought that I was going to have like something really cool, all of these guys like banding together to take on the Iconians or take on whoever built these gateways. Nope, did not get that at all. I got like memories, and I got Q, and I got this, that, and the other, and I was like, I am not on board for this. I did not sign up for this. I did not read these books to have this kind of garbage being presented to me in a way that, this is how we're wrapping it up. No, I thought, it was such a cop-out. I did not like it. I felt like the characters were completely out of character. It did nothing for me, so I give it 1 star. After that, I read Kate Remembered, Katharine Hepburn, A Personal Biography by A. Scott Berg. I give this 4 stars. It was very enjoyable to read about Katharine Hepburn's life. This is Berg's personal recollection of his 20-year relationship with Katharine Hepburn up until her death, and how he then was writing this article for this magazine that wanted to do the 50 most influential people of all time or something like that. He noticed that there were no women in it, and that was because the editor didn't want women in it. Berg was like, that's not right, and so he lobbied to get Katharine Hepburn included in it, and so he relented and allowed him to do the article. So then he got in touch with Katharine Hepburn, and she was like, well, come to my house, but only if you think, this will be good. The rest, as they say, is history. He then ended up knowing her for 20 years. So he kind of chronicles her life in this from what he gathered from her stories. There are some gems of anecdotes in this. There are times when I felt myself bursting out laughing. I loved learning about Katharine Hepburn from like a different perspective, like from a more personal perspective, in that the William J. Mann biography is probably just a biography from what I remember from what I read, whereas this one is a lot more personal, and he talks about his feelings towards her and how like he grew in great affection towards her, how he then would visit her quite often when he was in New York, and a different side of Katharine Hepburn that people did not see, and that's why I gave it 4 stars. It was beautiful. I then listened to the audiobook of Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, which I gave 4 stars. It was very enjoyable. I could really identify with Kath in her anxieties about writing, because I was the exact same, and I still am the exact same. I manipulate what is already there. I can't create from nothing. I need something that's already there. So that's where I could instantly relate to Kath, and even like her social anxieties about doing things at university. Like when I went to university, I didn't even stay in halls. I stayed at home because it was easier for me to commute up and down. I really enjoyed the characters. Some of the romances I was like, really? It was cute. It was a very cute book. What made me laugh was kind of the fangirl aspect of it, the Carry On series, this Simon Snow character. It is a ripoff of Harry Potter, but is Harry Potter, but he's in love kind of with Draco Malfoy. I found that hilarious to listen to whenever one of the narrators was reading the excerpts from the book and also from Kath's fanfic. It was hilarious, and like I could relate to that because there were times when I was in my fandoms and people were writing like fanfic like that, and I was like, really? That's what you're gonna write? You know, so very enjoyable, 4 stars. Then I read The Real Kate, a personal biography of Katharine Hepburn by Charlotte Chandler. This was completely different to the A. Scott Berg one in that this one is literally anecdotes. It is basically what Katharine Hepburn has said to Charlotte Chandler and what other people have said to Charlotte Chandler in interviews, and she's just typed it out and kind of interspersed each part of Katharine Hepburn's life with things that Katharine Hepburn has said, which is kind of backed up by what this director has said or this co-star has said. So it was very much a different reading experience from the A. Scott Berg one. Still, it was a 4-star read as well. I loved getting to know this other side of Katharine Hepburn where, like, she talks about, Katharine Hepburn herself talks about her stage persona, her acting persona as the creature. And then she then talks about herself as Kath or Kazzie. There's this thing at the very end that I really thought was a beautiful sentence. If you have a place to hide and you don't have to be a celebrity all the time, Fenwick was always my place to hide. My celebrity and I can be separate. Katharine Hepburn is safely frozen on the screen, so she is taken care of. I think I'll be Kazzie again. You know, it just like shows that there were 2 sides to this woman. There was Katharine Hepburn, the stage persona that we all know and love, and then there's Kazzie, the girl, the woman. It just showed a different side to this icon that I loved reading about, and I'm so glad that I read it. I then read The Battle of Beta Z by Charlotte Douglas and Susan Kearney. This is one of the Next Generation books. This is set 2 months after the events of Tears of the Prophets from Deep Space Nine, which is season 6, and several months before the events of Insurrection, which is movie number 9 in the Star Trek canon. This follows Deanna Troi more than anybody because, you know, she is from Beta Z, and her world is being occupied by the Dominion during the Dominion War. I read this years ago, and there were parts of it that I was like waiting to happen, and I was like, I forgot about that. But nevertheless, this was still a very good read. I loved seeing my favorite characters in like a different sense of themselves, in a different way. This could have been a really, really amazing episode for Deep Space Nine. Like with Voyager, sometimes they incorporated cast members from the Next Generation, like Reginald Barclay and Deanna Troi in season 6 and season 7. And also Reg was in season 2, I believe. So why didn't Deep Space Nine do the same thing with the Next Generation? Because, you know, the Enterprise E was so like freaking up to date. They could have created something like this because the Defiant is involved in this. Like Worf and Miles O'Brien are included in this because they were original Next Generation cast members. I would have watched it, and it would have been epic. And this book I give 5 stars because it was epic and because I got to see one of my favorite characters in a different way. Very enjoyable. Something that I'd always wanted from Deanna. So good. Then I read one of my most anticipated reads of 2019, and that was How to Forget by Kate Mulgrew, a daughter's memoir. I actually annotated this, and you can tell from my annotations that, you know, this book was good. It hit so close to home at times that I felt like I was going to cry, or I just wanted to give Kate Mulgrew the biggest hug imaginable. This is all about her relationship with her parents and how they died, her father from cancer and her mother from Alzheimer's, and also some things in her life that she didn't talk about in Born with Teeth. I don't know how this woman got through life. If one of these things had happened to me in this book, I would have been in a gutter, dead. I don't know how she just went up. She has just Herculean strength that I am just so proud to be a fan of hers and to have followed her career for so long. When I look at my annotations, a lot of them are blue. And those were the ones that were sad or poignant or had a chord with me. Because my dad passed away from MS, and a lot of the things that happened to her parents, like the way her father acted or the way that her mother's deterioration from Alzheimer's went from A to B to C to D, I could see all of that in my dad and the way that he went with MS. That made this book all the more hard-hitting, and just the way that it was Kate Mulgrew and she was expressing all of these thoughts and all these feelings and frustrations. And I was sat there thinking, I had those. I had those thoughts and feelings, and that if somebody like Kate Mulgrew could feel that, and I could feel for her, and I could get a sense of comfort from her words, then I could maybe like start to let go of my frustrations and my feelings and have this almost catharsis. Like, it wasn't really cathartic. It was kind of me facing me, really. But she did it in such a way that was beautiful, haunting, and I can't think of the word, but there was just something about this that just really made it poignant and made it accessible. It is just an incredible read. And the last book that I have to talk about is one that I haven't finished just yet, but I am pre-filming this because I'm going on holiday in a couple of days. The last book that I read in May was Star Trek Deep Space Nine Station Rage. This is set, I think, during season 1. There's no historical notes in the front of it that tells you whereabouts it was actually set in the Deep Space Nine timeline. Like with some of the other Star Trek books in this month, this was a reread for me. I read it years ago when I was younger. Forgot pretty much everything that happened in it, but I am enjoying it. I'm about halfway through when I am filming this, so I will definitely get it finished before the end of May. I think it's going towards a 3.5, just like the Gateways books. Nothing particularly jumping out at me. So there you have it, guys. Those are all of the books that I read in May, all 12 of them. I cannot believe that I got to like 12 books in the space of a month. All of that is in my reading vlogs. I will have the playlist for those linked down below if you want to check those out. I'm thinking that I should do fangirl reads more often because I get through a lot of books. At the time that I'm filming this, I am 15 books ahead of schedule on Goodreads. I have never been 15 books ahead of schedule in my life. This time last year, I think I was struggling to be 1 book ahead of schedule. I think realistically, I was probably at this point last year 2 books behind schedule. And I don't like being behind schedule. I like being ahead. I like being ahead of schedule. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!